All right, this is take 2 on the CRS32824P switch configuration. Camera 1, camera 2, and then OBS. Hello, how are you beautiful people? So many of you guys have been wondering about Vlans on the 300 series switches for Mikrotik. So here we are with a Mikrotik CRS32824P-4S plus RM. What does that mean? It's a CRS328 cloud router switch, 24 ports, so 24 P, PoE, right? And 4S plus, so 4 SFP plus, and plus RM equals rack mountable. Now, we're gonna do a standard router on a stick configuration today. By the way, cheers folks, I am drinking alcohol. So anyway, if you look here, you will see that we have got the SFP plus ports here. Now, what we're gonna do here is we have assigned, so I've designated, I'm going to move my little friends here. The cool thing about these switches is that we've got groupings. Take advantage of the groupings, okay? 8, 8, 8, 8, 16, 24. We've got backhaul for the first 8. They're all part of the same switch chip, by the way. Access points for the next 8, and site hardware for the next 8, okay? Booyah. And now, the cool thing about this Mikrotik switch and this Mikrotik router is they both have the ability to report power back via SNMP to your network monitoring software. So, because the router and the switch can both do that, we could essentially use the switch to power the router and still be able to monitor site power. So we're going to grab an active optical cable, an AOC, in this case here the S plus AO005 cable, and you're going to use this one to bridge the 4011 to the switch. Now the 4011 has to use an active optical cable. It has to be one of these orange cables, otherwise you can see stability issues, okay? Now, for the sake of the demonstration though, I'm going to use a DAC. That's only because my active optical cable got chewed up by a rabbit. That was a stupid idea. All right, so I'm gonna start by plugging in the SFP. So we're gonna plug it into port 1 here, and we're going to plug it into port 1 here on the 4011. So now the 4011 needs power. So let's use this Cat5 cable. We're gonna plug it into port 1 here, and then we'll plug it into port 1 here. And now this will detect that this is a 48 volt device and provide it with HV or 48 volts to boot the device up, okay? So now everything's plugged in, we can start configuring things. So now I'm going to plug my computer in so I can actually do something. I'm just going to randomly pick an interface here. I'm going to plug in port 5 on this. Now I've already enabled Roam on both devices, so we shouldn't have any problems accessing said devices and bouncing back and forth. Okay, I am not showing, this one's not booted yet. There we go, it's booting up now. Now, while I'm mentioning this, remember, just because this has router OS on it does not mean you can do routing on it. Do not do OSPF, MPLS, BGP, IGP, RIP, any kind of routing on the switch. It is just a switch. I don't care if its software allows for you to program in routing parameters. You don't do that. Why? Because the CPU in this thing is less capable than an unconscious toddler who's drunk. Okay, that's how the CPU's capability is on this thing, okay? It's basically a switch with a GUI, okay? So do not route on this switch. That's what the router's for. We got a 10 gig interface right here, very pretty. Okay, so now that I've explained that, there's also a cool little, couple of little things I should mention here. So this is a dual voltage switch. It's got 4 SFP plus ports, 24 PoE dual voltage, and it's got some little lights on the front here. One will actually notify you if one of the fans fail. Another one will notify you if there's a PoE fault in the system. And the other one will actually tell you when a user's logged into it. So now, when you start working with these switches, before you do any programming on your equipment, especially if you have a grouping of site hardware, you're going to want to make sure that you've got them upgraded to the latest firmware. I always use long-term. So we would go to mikrotik.com, let's see here, /downloads. This guy here, the CRS328 is actually an ARM, and if we log into it right now, here we go, I'll hit refresh. Here's the router, so I'm going to bring up the router first, put it over here for a second. And I'm going to connect to Roam on here so I can log into the switch. Okay, so here's the switch. So now if you look at the top of the switch window here, you're going to see that it is an ARM CPU. So we just simply go to the Mikrotik website, go to ARM, and here's the latest long term in the first column. So we're going to go ARM long term. Okay, now I'm done with the floor cam. I'm going to move over to the webcam. Now I can look up and do funny things with my face. Goat, raccoon, you guys can sit right here. Okay, so now we've got our hardware connected. So let's take a look at what the requirements are on the hardware itself. So I'm gonna get rid of this window. All right, so we've got our, here we go. We're gonna put the router here, or sorry, the switch here. There we go, over here. And we're gonna put the router, bye-bye, go away. I'm gonna go over here like so. Let's see here. All right, there we go. So let's take a look at what the VLAN requirements are on the router. Okay, so we've got, let's see here. So we've got 3 backhauls. Let's look at the routing here, so OSPF. So we've got 3 backhauls, 3 point-to-point backhauls, okay? Actually, I should actually set those for point-to-point just for the sake of consistency. Otherwise, somebody might get confused, and I don't want to confuse you guys when you're relying on this information. There we go. Cool. All right, so these are all point-to-point backhauls between sites. We've got the cemetery, the flowers station, or sewage treatment plant, and Tito's taco truck. Not all within the same vicinity. Okay, so here's your point-to-points. So we've got, let's see here, cemetery, flowers, and Tito's. And as you can see, the tags are all on the truck port, which is SFP+1, see how I labeled it? Switch 0, port SFP+1. Okay, so that way when we look at this, we know exactly how everything's interconnected, okay? Cool, pardon me. So here's VLAN 4000. This is for the customer access points, and here's 1001, which is the management VLAN. If you want to get into my naming convention on VLANs, I'll touch on it briefly. The one at the beginning of the backhauls there represents switch number 1. 06, 07, and 08 are the port numbers. So switch 1, port 06, switch 1, port 07, switch 1, port 08, and then management is 1001 consistently across the network. And the access points are on VLAN 4000. VLAN 4000. And usually I put the site number, like the tower ID is the last digit in the 4000. So because this is site 0, it's going to be 4000. All right, so now that that's been explained, we can see that, let's see here, if we go to the bridges here, the next thing is that if you look on the last mile bridge, I've changed the spanning tree priority to 1000. See? Same thing with the management, and you'll see why in a second, okay? Because we want to designate these 2 bridges, which are going to be interacting with this switch next to me, as the default bridge, okay? This is the root bridge, these bridges here, okay? So 1024, 1000. The lower number represents a higher priority, okay? So now if we look under the ports here, we're gonna add the appropriate VLAN to the appropriate one. So 4000 is for customers, so it's last mile, and 1001 is management, so it's gonna go into management, okay? Just like that. Now that we've established that, okay, let's just get rid of the router for a second, and we're gonna go over to the switch, which is where we need to focus now. So first things first, let's label it. So system identity. Okay, so this is site 0, switch 0. There we go, like so. Perfect. All right, now let's create a bridge. So I'm gonna go to quick set, and I'm gonna set this up as a bridge like so. Okay, bridge all ports. I'm gonna make this 192.168.88.2. like so. There's the gateway right there, 192.168.88.1. Excellent. DNS server, hey, fuck it. Let's just use Cloudflare. There's our router identity right there. Great. Okay, it's set. It is set. And so we'll just double check and make sure that Roman is still enabled. It is fucking right. Okay, and I'm not gonna get into doing the discovery or any of the additional settings on this because we're focusing on the VLANs, not the actual switch-based configuration. This configures the same way as any other router OS device. So if you watch my basic router configuration video, it'll tell you how to do the basic pre-programming on this thing, okay? So now let's go to the bridge. Yay! Look, there's a bunch of ports there. Oh, cool. Okay, let's relabel the bridge to be, there we go, bridge. Now, let's label the interfaces, because this is important to do before you actually start fucking around in the bridge, the VLAN bridge. So there's our trunk port. So remember, I like to capitalize SFP+1, never get rid of the port number. And this is router, ports, P for port, underscore, SFP+1, like so. And we want to make sure that the MTU on this one matches, for sure, the one on the router. So it's 1600 on the router, so it's going to be 1600 there. We'll just reconnect like so. There we go. Reconnect. Okay, there we go. So this is all up now. Cool. All right, so that's 1600. We got 1592 on the missing interfaces. Now, we are going to label these. So I'm going to make port 24. It's going to be a site monitor. So ETH24 site mon. Okay, cool. So that's a piece of hardware that's at the site. Now let's do our backhauls. Okay, so VLAN, or sorry, Ethernet 8, ETH8 is, let's see here, this is Tito's. So that's Tito's taco truck. Okay, 7 is going to be the flower truck, or flower station. ETH7, flowers. And Ethernet 6 is going to be the cemetery. ETH6. Because there's a tower at our cemetery here. Okay, now the access points. Remember, the grouping for the access points is going to be 9 through 16. So I'm going to use the last ports first on here. So let's go port 16. So ETH16 will be AP West. So port 15, AP East. see here, 14, sorry. ETH 14 equals AP south. 13 will be lucky 13. ETH 13, AP north. Okay, so there's our access points. So AP north, south, east, west. Never eat shredded wheat. Never shred heated wheat. I fucked it up. Okay, so we've got our backhauls here. 1, 2, 3 backhauls. We've got 4 access points, and we've got 1 site-specific piece of equipment. Okay, so then we've also got our trunk port. So now those interfaces are there. Okay, so now here's something very important. Let's see, we'll go to our bridge. Okay, first things first, we're gonna want to set our bridge priority. So this is 8,000. We can actually make it the second one if you want. You can just leave this alone if it's only one switch connected here and there's no other switches that'll be downstream of this, okay? So we'll set that and we're gonna enable VLAN filtering like so. This is what makes the VLAN filtering work. I'm gonna hit okay, it'll probably kick me out. We will wait a second for the layer 2 to stabilize. There we go, we're back in now. Okay, so here's all of our ports here. So first things first, we can actually set the VLAN through the interfaces here. So these are port-based VLANs, 6, 7, and 8, because they're access points, right? Or sorry, they're backhauls. So they're site to site, they're point to point between 2 sites, okay? So first, I'm gonna double click on a port, and I'm gonna make it 106, because this is Ethernet 6. So remember, switch 1, port 06. Now for port 7, okay? So 107, switch 1, port 07, and then port number 8, VLAN 108. So this is switch 1, port 08. Okay, so we've got those guys tagged, or sorry, they're untagging. They're PVID, they're participating in those VLANs, which means that those ports are now part of the untagged group. Okay, now watch. We could actually go over here to the back, or sorry, the access points. Oh my god, I'm jumping tonight. Okay, so the access points, we got 4. They're all gonna share the same VLAN because they don't need to be segregated this way, okay? Because we'll isolate them otherwise. So watch, 4,000. And I'm gonna hit Control A, Control C, I'm gonna copy that. All right, so we want all of these guys to be in the same bridge group because they're access points. They don't need their own dedicated point-to-point VLANs, okay? And I will be doing a SwOS version of this video as well. Let's see here. Now for the site monitor. The site monitor is actually going to be untagged on the management bridge, so you can plug into port 24 and be part of the management bridge, okay? So we're gonna go 1001 like so. We're untagging this one. Bridge. Okay, so now that's the first part. You don't touch this one because it's part of the base broadcast domain. So now we're going to go to VLANs here and you're going to see that there's some present. So I'm going to start with the groups. So this one here, I'm going to copy it. See how it says D? Watch, if I hover over it, it'll tell you why it says D. D for dynamic, not for, all right, so here we go. So you want to tag this on the access points, okay? So north, south, east, west. Because remember, we want the access points to have 1001 VLAN available on them in that broadcast domain, okay? Now we need to set the trunk port. So it's tagged on the trunk because it needs to be untagged at the switch, right? We need that interface present on the router to be able to place it within the bridge that it's supposed to be. I think I just tripped over my words. One more time. The reason why we want this tagged on the trunk port is so that in the router, there'll be an interface. There'll be VLAN 1001 that you can place inside the appropriate bridge or place an IP address. That VLAN 1001 inside of the router is an extension of the switch. It's basically bringing this bridge to be a present interface within the router itself. So now we have one untagged port here, port 24, because we want to be able to plug our site monitor into it, right? So now anything that's plugged into port 24 will be part of the management bridge, whereas that's the only one that can access VLAN 1001, the management bridge on the router. The rest of these ports, it's tagged on them, which means that downstream hardware like access points or CPEs can have a management VLAN enabled on them, allowing them to be elevated out of the client's broadcast domain, okay? So now we're gonna label this last mile management. Perfect. All right, next, we got 4,000, which is where all the access points are untagged so that the open broadcast domain traffic, like the customer's routers and anything else that's present on the access points and CPEs, well, actually, you'll be able to place that interface within the customer bridge so that anything that's there will be part of 4,000 or the last mile bridge on the router itself. So I'm going to show you how you untag here now, okay? So we're going to copy this to make it persistent, to make it static, okay? And we're going to tag it on the trunk port. So we're tagging on the trunk. We're tagging on the interface that's going back to the router, and now we're going to untag 1, 2, 3, 4 these interfaces so that anything that's plugged into 13, 14, 15, and 16 will immediately be part of VLAN 4000. See, so tagged on the trunk port, untagged on the interfaces themselves, the downstream interfaces, okay? So tagged on the upstream, untagged on the downstream. So we're gonna label this one as well, like so, last mile. Okay, cool. So now we've got our port-based VLAN specifically for point-to-point and OSPF or whatever point-to-point routing you might be using between devices for backhauls. Okay, so let's make this one persistent. Copy. Okay, so we're going to tag it on the trunk port and untag it on interface 8 because the VLAN 108, port 8. Pretty simple, eh? Now let's do that again. Port 7. I'm going to copy this to make it persistent. I'm going to tag it on the SFP+, and I'm going to untag it on VLAN 107, port 7. There we go. Let's do that one more time. 6. Okay, we're going to copy it to make it persistent, okay? We're going to tag it on the trunk port, which is the SFP, and we're going to untag it on port 6, which is where VLAN 106 is going. There we go. So it's literally as simple as that to create your VLAN groups on here. I'm just looking over here for a second to make sure that I didn't miss any of that and that I am actually recording audio. I am. This is amazing. Hopefully this tape did not get fucked up because I got it down to 18 minutes. Okay, so that's basically how you make this work. Now, something I should point out, see the H in here? Watch, if I hover over it, I stands for inactive, H stands for hardware offloading, okay? So if you don't see the H, it means you've done something to break hardware offloading. You've done something silly, like you created a VLAN on that interface the other way, which is basically by going like VLAN, and then we'll make it 2000 just for shits and gigs, and we'll stick that on port 4. So now if I stick a VLAN on there like that, if we go back to the bridge here, that should kill it. Hold on, Ethernet 4, there it is. Oh, it didn't kill it, cool. I look like an idiot. We'll just remove that. Basically, if you don't do the VLANs properly on here, or you do anything weird that takes away from the proper switching functionality, you'll see the H disappear, and that means the hardware offloading is no longer functional. If hardware offloading is not functional, it means it's not using the switch chip to do the switching. It's trying to soft switch through the CPU. If it tries to soft switch through the CPU, your CPU will shit the bed at 200 megabits per second. So at 200 megs, 160-ish, the CPU can no longer handle the amount of switching. The packets per second will cause it to topple. So if you see the H disappear, it means that you've done something wrong. You might have overcomplicated it, missed a step, or done something weird, which has caused the hardware offloading to break. You don't want hardware offloading to break. And remember, just because the routing functionality is present in this switch means not to route in this switch. Do not do anything other than switching on your switch. Don't do any static routing, don't do any dynamic routing, nothing. This is a switch. I don't care if it has router OS on it. Remember, just because it has router OS doesn't mean that it's a router, okay? So remember that, folks. The routing is done on the router, the switching is done on the switch. And I will be making another video that covers switch OS switching on the switch. So that's essentially it. It's literally that simple, okay? So your VLANs are present here, okay? There's all your VLANs. They show up in here dynamically when you put the appropriate VLAN ID onto the appropriate interface, okay? And then you can, of course, make them persistent by copying them, okay? Now, if we go back over here for a second, we've got everything labeled, we've got everything on here. And again, I'm not gonna go over the other configurations on this thing. This is just to show you how the VLANs work, okay? Let me just move this guy over like so. And now we're gonna go back to the router for a second. And if we go to the interfaces here, you should now see running, look, running slave, because it's a slave on the, this is 1001, it's a slave on the management bridge, okay? And this one is running slave, see, RS, because it is a slave of the last mile bridge, okay? And if you look over here, these guys are active as well, VLAN 106, 107, 108, because they're tagged. This is how you tag on the router. I've already done another video on this, so I'm not going to get into all the details in the router. I'm focusing on the switch. So this is tagged on the trunk port, which is the SFP plus going between this router and that switch. See? So they're running, you know that they're working, okay? Mind you, it's only asynchronous traffic because there's nothing coming back in on it. There's no responses coming in on it. So actually, what I can try doing here, because I very much limited the configurations on these. There's no other ports doing anything, so I can't create a loop by doing what I'm about to do. I'm going to take port 7 here as an example, and I will go to port 7 on the switch, and we should start seeing broadcast traffic across this VLAN. Oh, did I create a loop? No, I didn't. So there you go. The port's active, and you can see that it's receiving and transmitting. Cool, eh? So that's just generic broadcast traffic on here that's occurring. So there we go. And if we want to test this again, let's go to port 6 now. So I'm going to put port 7 on the router into port 6, and we should see, once it establishes, we should actually see some broadcast traffic on VLAN 106, which is just above the blue line now. See? There it is there. And then if we want to test VLAN 1000 here, I can move this from here over to port 24 like so, And remember, the port that I'm plugged into on the router, by the way, for this testing, is not part of any bridges, so there's no possibility of it creating a loop. Okay, so now we can see that there's broadcast traffic on VLAN 1001, and let's do one more. Let's do the customer bridge, okay? So we're gonna go to 16. So we should see broadcast traffic on VLAN 4000 now. Here you go. So that's how you do it. That is how you configure a 300 series switch Mikrotik with VLANs. It's that simple. If you need any further clarification or if I fucked up in the video, by all means, in the comments below, please give me any kind of critique about how I can improve on my content or how I can explain it better, or if you need me to clarify a little bit more. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you love the channel, by all means, please help the channel out by joining our Patreon. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. Oh, and the Facebook group. And we're on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that, but who cares anyway? I mean, it's social media, it's like toxic. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. We are at 24 minutes right now before the cut. And thank you to all of our patrons for helping keep the channel alive. And thank you, Yuya, for doing the editing. Love you guys. Catch you later.